Have you all ever had that moment where you're exposed to a piece of media you've never heard about, but once you learn about its existence, you realize how perfectly up your alley it is and how much it appeals to you? Well, I think it's obvious what show that was for me. Princess Principal is an anime original that aired in 2017 that I saw nobody ever talk about. The way I finally learned about it was a tweet mentioning how the writer for The Witch From Mercury previously worked on this show and had similar themes at play. I even remember hearing about how this show is the reason he was hired to work on G-Witch, because like that show, it is also pretty gay, and we will definitely be getting to that later. After knowing that the show was a thing and that it was only 12 episodes, I decided to give it a watch. After finishing the show and watching the 3 OVAs currently released, I realized, oh no, I am once again obsessed with a show that's going to live rent-free for the foreseeable future inside my brain. But you want to know what's the really frustrating part about it? I'm having such a hard time quelling that obsession, because from my observations, the online presence this show has is incredibly minuscule. Maybe a part that has to do with its current availability. You can only watch the show through an Amazon Prime subscription, or on High Dive where you'd also have access to the dub. There's also places like AnyWatch if you want a freer way to access the show, but you didn't hear that from me. It doesn't change the fact that I feel like I'm scavenging a desert whenever I try to look for any outside fan content of the show. Maybe I was looking in the wrong places, but my searches on social media have given me very little to engage with, although YouTube's current search engine is pretty bad, so that may not be helping. I even went as far as to search for fanfiction on AO3, which is a pretty good indicator of how much I love a series when I go that far, you know? But the results were just a lot of fics that were very explicit, and well, listen, I just wanted some fluff and angst before I go to bed. It's like, I was really just not for me. So that is why we are here today, as I love this show and would like to share why I'm so enamored with it. This is why you should watch Princess Principal. If I were to give a quick summation of what this show is, it is an action spy series set in a 20th century steampunk London, while also being a sapphic retelling of The Prince and the Pauper, and if those words did not immediately make you want to watch the show for yourself, then let us continue. In the Kingdom of Albion, the lower class of London started a revolution to overthrow the royal family, resulting in a wall that divided the nation into two, with one side being known as the Commonwealth and the other being the Kingdom. Ever since then, the Commonwealth has sent out spies, Ange and Dorothy, for Operation Changeling, a plan in which Ange will replace the princess who's fourth in line to the throne, in order to have a spy deep within the kingdom. Instead, what happens is that Princess Charlotte offers to cooperate with the spies if they help her achieve her goal of becoming the queen, which is a deal they agree upon, as it's revealed that Ange and the princess have a close connection that we currently don't know much about. From here, we follow the girls as they act as students at a prestigious school while taking on a variety of missions for the Commonwealth. This is where an interesting aspect of Princess Principal's storytelling comes into play. See, the episodes are not in the chronological order that they happen. Each episode is classified as a case, and the first episode is Case 13, which is exactly in the middle of the story, and the second episode is the actual beginning of the series. While this may seem unorthodox at first, it actually works pretty well. Each episode is somewhat episodic. The missions that the girls receive usually open and end within the episode that they're introduced, with the status quo changes being kept to episodes when characters are added to the group, such as when the princess and her aide Beatrice join the spies in episode 2, and when Chise joins the group in episode 5, which is Case 7. This ended up creating a good amount of intrigue for me on my first watch of the series. I knew a character like Chise was part of the team, but up until episode 5, I had no idea how she joined, and I learned in the first episode that Beatrice could alter her voice to impersonate others, but I didn't know why she had this ability until episode 3. The first episode also features a character that takes an outsider role, which acts as a natural way for all the characters to introduce who they are, without being forced. It's a pretty interesting way of presenting a show, but if that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, you can easily look up the chronological order to watch episodes. And that works perfectly fine too. The last 3 episodes are in sequential order regardless. Now, as I previously stated, each episode focuses on a mission the girls are tasked with, and there's a good variety of them. They can range from protecting a Japanese minister from an assassination attempt, working at a morgue in order to retrieve a cipher for the kingdom's foreign affairs office as it was left within a corpse, to even hunting down a serial killer by going undercover in a laundry mill in order to find the traces of the poison that they use on their laundry, as it was deduced that the killer has to be a military soldier in order to access the poison that they use, which has since been banned by the Geneva Conventions. Yeah, the different cases they tackle can get very inventive, but that's one of the main reasons I found this show so much fun to watch. There's a great level of meticulousness for how these missions unfold, and I really appreciate how it's not just action 24/7. A good amount of time is spent with characters retrieving information and figuring out what their next move is. Sometimes an episode will have no real action, but tension still ends up being created, such as in episode 2 when everyone at the ball the girls have attended will be searched for the item that they have just stolen, leading to this back and forth where Ange has to create a clean negotiation with both the princess and her higher ups, so that the princess can cover for her, or else they'll be caught by the man in charge of hunting down spies. That's not to say there isn't a good degree of action either. It just usually acts as a climax to a mission when all other options have been exhausted. One of my favorites is episode 5 where the girls have to stop two trains from colliding into each other once the tracks merge, all the while one of the girls is having a sword fight with the assassin they've been anticipating the whole episode. And another is when Ange is running on the side of a plane while dodging bullets with the power of her gravity orb. That's another thing too. In this universe there's a substance known as cavorite, and our main lead uses a device powered by it to basically have gravity powers. She can alter the gravity of herself and whatever she comes into contact with, which is an extremely cool and creative power the show has created. I love watching all the different ways it's used, from acrobatics to launching off at high speeds, and in one moment, causing all the dust in a room to float back up to where it was originally, to prove that the objects that we're looking for have recently been relocated. This show is the coolest thing ever, oh my god. But you know, what is a good show without good characters? And Princess Principal's main cast is an absolute treat. Now, because of the more episodic format, the series is less about big character arcs, and more about learning about what kind of person each character is. Alongside episodes that focus on the team as a singular unit, there will be episodes focusing on one or two characters, which let us know more about their story. Each member brings something unique to the team with their own strengths and weaknesses as people. Take a character like Beatrice for example. She never planned on being a spy, but became roped into it when the princess agreed to join their operation. As such, she's originally more opposed to the rest of the group out of a love and desire to protect the princess from any harm. Even after becoming on board, she's by far the least trained member. She's a very prim and proper girl when in normal environments, but she is often the most scared and acts the most uncertain when on missions. Put her in any combat situation and she is likely not to contribute much, but where she does shine is through her voice. When she was younger, she was experimented on by her father and was left with a mechanical throat, but it's through that she can mimic the voices of others, which proves to be an incredibly useful ability when deception is such a vital aspect of the job. Beyond that, while she still may be the most afraid, that doesn't at all make her a coward since she's still willing to put her own life on the line to help others however she can, and also acts as a good heart to the team that makes things more relatable. She's also just endearing as the small British child that they have tag along on these life-risking jobs. In contrast, you have Chisei, an exchange student from Japan who acts both as a spy not only for the Commonwealth, but for Japan to decide which side of this nation's conflict they should side with. Thanks to the power of having a sword in an anime, she is highly proficient in swordsmanship and acts as the greatest muscle the team has as a result. She could pull off some insane feats, such as flipping an entire car over with just one sword swing, as well as throwing a bullet so hard with a bowstring that it ends up being as strong as a pistol, which is impressive. But because she's from Japan and has never been to London before, she's the most fish out of water character in the cast, mixing in with the naivety that stems from her still young age, and she ends up a lot more socially inept compared to the others, but the show doesn't feel like it's belittling her because of this. While some humor is derived from her cultural differences, there's a good level of sincerity behind it all to highlight her troubles with adapting to such a different land, and the other characters are sure to support her whenever needed. Like in episode 9 when she's confronted by a group of a-hole dudes, which leads to the princess teaching her how to properly challenge someone to a duel, to where she absolutely wipes the floor with her opponent, and the group celebrates her victory afterwards. There's a great sense of unity and friendship between the girls that's nice to watch, but the one that's closest to a leader can't be considered Dorothy. She's the oldest of the group at age 20, and it's brought up numerous times how she basically has to pretend to be a high schooler, which isn't really fooling people but nobody really questions it. She's the one that receives information on missions and debriefs it to the rest of the cast. She doesn't have any particularly unique abilities other than the fact that she's one of the 2 people in the group who's been trained for years to be a spy, and her habit to use seduction to distract people and have them drop their guard. Also, I'm pretty sure she's the only member that probably knows how to drive a car. She's the most all around in what she's capable of, but in terms of personality, she's easily the most laid back member. She has a level of confidence unique from the rest, and feels like an eldest sister willing to have a bit of fun whenever the opportunity shows itself. As a spy, she's one of the most professional members, but she knows how to make light situations in ways that don't come off as overly snarky or witty. we get 2 episodes that go into her different aspects of her past, and it's compelling seeing how she turned out the way she did, and what relations she made along the way. The writing of the show hits such a nice balance with its tone for me. The show can definitely get very dark at points, and the writing is serious enough to back that up, but it also knows how to be lighthearted. Scenes are able to be silly and humorous in a way that doesn't go overboard like how other anime I've seen can go all bombastic with the yelling and character expressions. That's not a diss towards anime that do that, since there's a bunch of those that I love, but I enjoy the way Princess Principal grounds its interactions with just the right level of heightened reality to get me immersed in the world and characters. There's enough fun moments spliced in throughout, such as the group practicing tailing missions and making a game out of it, or when both Chise and Ange try to teach Beatrice how to pick a lock, but they are both terrible teachers.
I suspect they are saying rude things about us over there.
I think it's fair to get angry.
I could go on endlessly about all the cute interactions this series contains, but then we'd be here all day. Before we get to our special last 2 characters, I want to give a brief bit of attention to the art design and music of the series. The Kingdom of Albion very much has a steampunk aesthetic going on for it, and it is something that I adore because steampunk is one of my favorite visual styles. It's part of why I love The Great Ace Attorney and part of why I'm so excited for that new Professor Layton game. While the locations such as their school are these very clean and proper places, whenever they go into the city, it's well visualized how grimy and run down the city is. The pipes that are always leaking out steam, the smoke from the chimneys, the use of browns and grays, it all makes this kingdom a rough place to live in. This all comes together whenever a mission occurs at night. The fog becomes accented really well with the orange lights to give this orange glow to the lower levels of the kingdom, which you get great views of thanks to how the carriages will be in elevated locations, such as the roads high above the buildings. And the green glow of Ange's Cavalry abilities also beautifully contrasting that orange hue. This is all without even talking about the designs of the characters, which I think are excellent. Special shout out to Ange's spy attire, which I think is really cool. I'm not particularly sure how a top hat is supposed to be convenient for spy work, but I love how it looks, so who cares really. Now as for the music, I love the style that is brimming out of this show's OST. It's what you'd expect of a soundtrack about spies in London. You got your variety of orchestra works that drive home the drama, but the incorporations of instruments such as the flute and piano are fantastic. The OP and ED are all sung in English too, with the OP being an absolute banger and the ED being way catchier than it has any right to be. I'll put links to both in the description for those that want to hear them. So with all that out of the way, all that's left to talk about are Ange and Charlotte, the 2 characters I've been skimming by the most because they are kind of a package deal. In order to understand one, you also need to understand the other, and this part of the video will definitely be the most spoiler-filled section considering how important these 2 are. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the story of these 2 characters, then skip to this point in the video. Whether or not you watch this part of the video depends on how much curiosity you have left or how much more convincing you need to build up interest in the show essentially. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. Ange is the one that could be considered our main character. She's the one involved in the most missions, is given the most focus throughout the story, is the most capable spy by far, and is the one that uses the titular Cavalry device to do all the cool gravity nonsense. She's also the one who was meant to take the role of the princess, which is a plan that didn't go through because, as we quickly find out, the princess and Ange are childhood friends. We learn about their backstory in episode 8. 10 years ago, Ange was actually the original Princess Charlotte, who began growing tired of her royal life, until she met a pickpocket who looked remarkably like her. The 2 quickly hit it off and became very close. The pickpocket would visit every day, and they loved to pull pranks to the adults by dressing the same. Eventually, the princess wanted to try out switching places with the pickpocket, so that she can live out what it would be like to be in the outside world, where she wouldn't have all these expectations placed upon her. Instead, what she finds is the cruel state of poverty that the common person deals with. They also happened to switch places right when the revolution against the kingdom occurred. After seeing the injustices in the world, the princess declared that she would become the queen and create a better world for everyone, and one where she and the pickpocket could be together in peace. Before she could see this go through though, a cannon shot causes the 2 of them to be separated, as the pickpocket is mistaken for the princess and is taken back to the kingdom. As a result, the 2 ended up completely switching lives. The original Princess Charlotte became the Ange that we know today, and the original Ange is now the current Princess Charlotte. For clarity's sake, I'm going to continue to name the 2 by what they're called in the present, so you know, that's Ange, and that's Charlotte. We're sticking with that. With Ange having nowhere to go, she ends up as a spy for the Commonwealth, with the hopes of one day meeting her old friend again, which is no doubt a hard task to accomplish, but this episode specifically emphasizes Charlotte's own struggle. She had to go from being a pickpocket with no education to a gifted member of royalty that did everything perfectly, with a looming fear that she would be killed if she was ever discovered to not be the real princess. It was a terrifying situation to be in, but eventually, she faked it so well that she really is just now the princess. Even carrying on Ange's wish of becoming queen to tear down the walls that divide the nation, but this now conflicts with Ange's own desires. She has dropped any hope of bringing about any greater good, and merely wants to be together with or protect Charlotte at all costs. One girl is willing to sacrifice their love toward the other for the sake of the world, while the other is willing to sacrifice everything for the one that they love. This part of the relationship really tells you a lot about these two characters. One of the most defining traits of Ange is her ability to lie. This girl fully embraces the facade that she has to put on, such as being a clumsy and naive schoolgirl, or a rough and aggressive laundry worker. She'll often make up lies that are frankly unnecessary, but do it so that nobody bothers to question her. A running bit that she has is her story of being an alien from what she calls the Black Lizard planet. It's bizarre, but after enough time, you just kind of accept it for what it is and go along with it like the characters themselves. She's the kind of character that has a cold and snarky exterior, but truly is a caring person that's willing to help others when the situation calls for it. She just doesn't mess around with anything related to the princess, who is the person that she's the most honest around. But it's in that honesty that she also finds herself at her most vulnerable. That exterior she has completely drops whenever she's with Charlotte. Charlotte is a person that has fully embraced the lie that she has lived until it became her truth. She's a hard person to read, similar to Ange, but it's handled differently. She has a very kind and enthusiastic personality, in contrast to the personality Ange has created for herself. To some, this seems like a facade or that her smile is fake, but it's become more complicated than that. Originally, it was a basic mask, but again, she's been living this life for so long that it's become more than that. While Ange hides her personality through a forest of lies, Charlotte hides herself behind a thick exterior that's hard to see through. They're both living examples of what it means to hide away who you are your whole life, but the princess still has a unique contribution to the team. She uses her presence and position as queen to help push forward missions however she can, such as buying out the laundry mill they went undercover for, and they end up turning it into a profitable business so that the girls working there can live more comfortable lives. Even in this episode though, we see the influence Charlotte has on Ange, as she always comes in to protect her however needed, which is well highlighted when she pulls her out of a fight completely. These two have the strongest bond out of any two characters in the show, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out what kind of relationship these two have going on. Heck, just look at the official art of these two together and tell me what you think. You know what, just listen to some of these lines and just what do you make of this?
Look, Charlotte, I don't want to have to hide our relationship any longer.
Neither do I.
If we can bring the wall down for good, we'll be together without worry.
But I didn't give up on living, because I wanted to see you again. That was the only thing. It gave me hope to keep on fighting. You know I despise who I used to be.
I know, but it's the old you I remember. That's the one I love.
The moments that these two share together are some of my favorite in the series. You can tell how much they care for each other in all of their interactions, but can't be happy together the way they want to due to outside forces, which is why becoming queen and changing the kingdom means so much to Charlotte. There's very clear subtext in that as well, as the very concept of being a spy is someone who must deceive others on who they truly are for the sake of their own self-preservation. The theme of lies is one that's very clear in Princess Principal's writing, and it is not subtle at all about this. The show makes it very clear as early as the first episode. Revealing who you are can be scary, dangerous even. It leaves you vulnerable. You have no idea how people are going to react to how you truly are, or if they'll even accept you. Am I too dull of a person? Should I tell my friends about the relationship I have with someone? Is it easier if I just lower everyone's expectations of me? Should I act tough to scare away others? What version of me would people like more? Maybe it would all be for the best if I closed myself off. These are the kind of thoughts that I believe Princess Principal's narrative is capturing, and it's one I find very resonant. This show understands why people lie in order to get by in life. It's not a sin to be scared of honesty, but that also makes the moments we are truthful and the moments we do let ourselves be vulnerable hold so much more significance. It allows us to become more comfortable with the people in our lives, gives us someone who will show us support, and can create bonds greater than if we were to shut ourselves away. This is what I believe to be the message that Princess Principal has to offer to us, and it's one of the many reasons I love this show. It's a moral I find interesting and have yet to see other series tackle in such a way. Like I said at the beginning, this show was one that really appealed to me. It's got fun action and operations, an excellent amount of world building, an absolutely beautiful aesthetic and music, and characters that I can't help but grow attached to, with the two main leads that have stolen my hearts, which has recently happened before by the same writer. I'm noticing a trend, and I'm not going to reflect on it much. If anything I've talked about has grabbed your interest at all, I implore you to check out the show for yourself. As I said before, you can watch the show officially through Amazon Prime and on High Dive, where you also have access to the dub, as well as through other sites that are free, you know. This is actually one of those instances where I prefer watching the dub. The characters are all given accents that fit with the context of the show, and the voices they give to people like Beatrice can be very fun to hear.
You nobles sure like to use such naughty language.
Oh my god, what else would I call it?
Still though, that'll all be up to your preference. Regardless, it's all those reasons and more that I think you should watch Princess Principal. Well, that seems like a good place to call it for this video. If you enjoyed your time, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of junk. This video was very fun to do for me, and I feel good to finally talk about things that aren't G-Witch again, although I had a lot of fun doing that too. With all that said though, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.